Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So off air, Sam and I were just like laughing and giggling, cracking jokes because we both realized that both of our spouses actually work for the same company. So if either one of them are actually listening to this episode right now, I want you to kind of think about it right now. Like we're actually having a conversation, but you two are working in the same office at the same time, which is mashed up, right? So whoever I like to talk to someone, I like to give them a particular nickname. So the nickname for Sam is going to be the creative data boss. So with that, let's see, you're accepting it and you're embracing it, all right?
Yeah, I can work with that.
So I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Sure. So, yes, I am Sam Torres. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at thegray.company, and we're an agency that specializes in strategic and technical SEO and data. So, when it comes to marketing data, we're looking at everything from how do you use it to educate and inform other parts of your business, to implementing tracking, and then, of course, actually getting insights from the data itself and doing reporting. So one of the things that we do love to talk about all the time is kind of that first piece, because we think it's something that is highly under leveraged. There's a lot of research that SEO and marketing teams do that just seems to be left in only that aisle and doesn't extend to other parts of the business and really help make better decisions. So really just all the things that we can do as far as being able to understand the consumer mindset, especially we're more online than we ever have been before, thanks to COVID, or unfortunately to COVID. It's a little column A, little column B. And so just from there, the ways that we can understand our users, like I say, it's just being really under leveraged and underutilized. So that's one of the things that we've been talking about a lot and really passionate about. Um, so that's what I'm here to talk about, but we can take that anywhere you want to.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, taking it in multiple different directions. I mean, we could definitely start off with some of the tech stuff, right? So, I mean, obviously, I think the key phrase on your website is strategy, tech, and the data, right? So, I
Mhm.
want you to kind of like allude to what that means, because I mean, each one of these words could be independently of each other, but again, combining three of them means something a little bit different than the norm.
Sure. So let me start with just the different disciplines of SEO. So within search engine optimization, there's usually a few different ways you can go. You can either be tech or content focused. So we have content capabilities, but it's certainly for me and my business partner not our sweet spot. We do a lot of content strategy. We're not really a content house where we're just writing up a bunch of pieces. The content houses, that is a common business structure for SEO. What we're doing more is leading the strategy. So how do you identify the right targets, the right places to go after, the right topics that you want to own? Those are the things that honestly we really want to start to understand.
Yeah.
On the technical side, it's also ideally you're building your website for people, but you also need to build it in a way that Google and other search engines can understand. So that's where you start getting into the code level items and how is Google actually able to crawl, understand your website and the content that you're presenting so that you can actually show up in search. And when interested parties are looking for you, they can actually find you. So that's the technical side. I actually come from a development background as well, which I say as well since my husband is a full stack developer. Um, but because of that, looking into the actual code, how does Google read it versus how a user reads it? There's just a lot of nuance there. And so that's definitely where our specialties are. So that's kind of like the different areas of SEO. You can usually go content or tech. We definitely lean more tech. And then in the data, yeah, it is taking things. So in SEO, we do a lot of keyword research. So what keywords are users looking for? How often? When are the peak times? So for example, right now we're getting ready for Black Friday. We're going to see a ton of searches around e-commerce, and they're going to be 4x, sometimes 10x what they are the rest of the year. So understanding the seasonality and the trends for that. But some of the other things we do that makes us a little bit unique is that we go way beyond just search data. So we're also using some of those technical skills to gather data on YouTube, on Reddit, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, to really understand what are the conversations that people are having in digital spaces so that we can better understand and also predict where search is going. Because sometimes you do see that social trends inform where search is going. And the search analysis, if you're depending only on that, it only looks at historical. Google doesn't do quite as good a job as being able to predict where things are going if you're looking strictly at keyword data. Whereas when we're looking at TikTok data, we can identify new products, new product use cases that are going to start coming up and almost dictate or inform that search demand. So basically, we're just going in all different kinds of places on the web that honestly, the data is free. It's just a matter of, are you able technologically to access it? We use a lot of machine learning and AI models to be able to really get down and distill the data into actual bite-sized pieces. Because, for example, like I had one project where I was analyzing over 16,000 YouTube videos. That's really hard to analyze as one person. But if you use machine learning models, you can. So doing all of that to really help us understand where to meet our users, where our customers are going to be in 2, 6, 12 months, instead of waiting for the search data to tell us where they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so collectively, I think for the audience, right? So just abbreviate that. So you're talking about digital customer intelligence, which is DCI, which is collectively what you guys are doing at scale. So I want you to kind of unpack that, because again, the digital part of it, I think people comprehend. I think they understand the tech, but essentially you guys are leveraging big data to get the actual endpoint and end result. So I want you to kind of talk about from that perspective, like how does big data play into these algorithms and the scenarios? Because point to what you said, Google is one thing, but obviously Facebook is more behavioral versus Google is more keyword, and the different platforms have different variations. So how do you guys kind of organize all that noise and get the results that you're looking for?
Sure. So great questions. And honestly, a lot of that will depend on kind of what is the question that we're trying to answer. So usually when we're working with our clients and working on these projects, there's a question. So for example, we've had one project, we got to work with a streaming company, and they were trying to determine where should their content programming focus be. So they were looking at creating new content on different channels than their own platform, and wanted to understand where is kind of the hole in the market for a particular audience on what topics to cover. So that's one example. Another is we were looking at a product roadmap. A company came to us with kind of their roadmap, but wanted more information to be able to prioritize it. So from there, we're looking at, all right, what are users actually talking about? Where are they frustrated? Where are they complaining? Where are your competitors leaving opportunity for you to kind of swoop in and take that business? So like I say, a large part of it depends on what question are we trying to answer, and then that will kind of determine what data do we have access to. Once we kind of know the data sources, typically after that, there's a ton of APIs into these platforms, and as I said, the data is free. It's there. You don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get access to it like you would when you're working with like a large traditional marketing research company. It's just there. So we just use the APIs, pull the relevant sources that we want. Maybe we're looking for specific hashtags or by specific creators, specific channels. And then we start using, so Cornell actually offers a ton of free machine learning models. So I'll use those pretty often to then do what we call topic modeling or topic clustering. And it's, here, take of these 16,000 videos, for example, give me kind of what are the high level topics that are being talked about. So we were able to distill that down into like 22 major topics. And it was things like, these are videos talking about, and these were educational resources. So it was talking about like, here's how to, here's all about the time of year versus learning colors versus learning some Spanish. So you start getting into those topics, and then from there, you can even do things like run sentiment analysis. So we took each topic and ran sentiment analysis in the videos that actually were attributed to that, to be able to understand like, hey, all right, well, so people are really unhappy when it comes to learning Spanish colors. So that's just an example of kind of where we identify, but it's really about using that machine learning, using the AI models themselves to help you find the insights. And then I just usually do like a little bit of a cursory, like, let me look through the data, make sure this feels right. You kind of have to take in any of the statistics classes. If anybody remembers those, I shockingly remembered more than I thought I would. And so it really comes into help when you're trying to analyze the big data. And there's also just a ton of free resources out there to help you do it, whether you're running Python scripts or using machine learning models, or, there's just a ton of data science programs because data science is becoming a larger and larger industry. And so even just dipping your toe into it, you can start really building better understanding, because the data is there and it's just waiting for you to do something with it.
So I'm listening to you speak, and I think a couple of keywords that you said were, kind of going into bilingual a little bit. You mentioned Spanish, and obviously you speak Spanish, you speak Italian, and I think I was wondering why you didn't like include like programming languages. Like why didn't you include PHP and other languages that you obviously know how to speak fluently as well? But kind of going into the next question is, when did you start articulating the bilingual aspect of what you do, and are you then using it in what you're doing today?
So that all depends on the clients. Most of our clients are English speaking companies, but for my clients that do have multilingual audiences, yes, we'll use it. It does come into play less often than I would probably like.
Mhm.
But usually it starts coming into when we're trying to build personas and understanding, for example, people who are Latin American,
Mhm.
the value sets for culture are wildly different. So knowing kind of where to appeal
Mhm.
to customers tends to be quite a bit different than English speakers. Um, but it can be really interesting when we're doing kind of these intelligence research projects, uh, because you also start noticing things like bias
Mhm.
and just how we talk about things. Um, which I could probably do an entire episode just on ethics in AI and marketing, because it's something I'm super passionate about. Because it's the bias is real, and we can't get rid of it entirely, but at least being cognizant of it, I think, gives us or gets us way further than we've typically been. But bias is something certainly, we're talking about all these research. We're doing a lot of it. Most of it is going to be based on text. And so the bias that comes in just with language itself is something to start considering when you are working with big data sets, and just the different audiences where you're going to start putting it into play.
So let's time travel back. And I want you to kind of think, and I'm going to say a couple different things and it'll put you in a point of reference, right?
Okay.
So you're in high school, you're in the chamber chorus, you're in jazz singing, and you're in the Spanish club. Did you think at that moment in time you would be talking the way you talk right now as far as technology goes, considering that technology was around back then, but you are 100% engulfed in it now?
No, I actually thought that being more technical, I wanted to always keep it a hobby. And
Mm.
I certainly also never, I mean, even 5 years ago, I was saying I would never own my business. I never wanted to do it. Um, and here I am. I have a business partner who's fantastic. But yeah, I own my business now. I write my schedule. I get to do what I want, within reason. Because I still got to pay them bills. But yeah, certainly I thought I was going to do something a lot more social. And what's interesting is I still do. And I think that's the really interesting thing, and why I love what it is we're doing is because it is about almost the psychographics and understanding the psychology and sociology of your audiences. We're just happening to combine that with technology.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, certainly. I mean, I've been coding since I was 9. I would make websites on GeoCities. And if you don't know what that is, go ask your dad. Um, for anybody listening. Um, but yeah, I always wanted it to be a hobby. I never actually thought it would be what I do to make a living.
Mm. So, I mean, obviously, I think, the brainiac side is what you love to do and you utilize it, but there's also another side to you as well, right? So, on the other side of you, like this cosplay that comes into play. So, I want you to kind of like talk about that, like on the personal side, how does that kind of keep you sane, considering like all this information, all these different data points? Like we love it, we talk about it, but every once in a while, turning it off could be a good thing. So, like, how do you deal with that?
Oh, for sure. So I do try to turn off my tech every now and then. With cosplay, it's a place to be creative. So, you definitely can be creative in technical solutions, but it's usually not very visual, and there's definitely a visual component that I appreciate. So, um, yeah, just the social aspect that brings to cosplay, plus I live in Atlanta where we have Dragon Con, and being able to like see other people and share in the passion is really what's very exciting about that part. And certainly something that I need in my life in order to stay fulfilled. But it's interesting kind of the doors that it opens and the people that you meet. Meeple, that's a gaming term, but yeah, so it turns really fun, and like I say, it gives me a chance to be creative. Because also, if you know anything about Enneagram, I am definitely a type 2 wing 4. So, or sorry, wing 3. And then my times of calm is a 4. So like I have to, if things aren't crazy for me, I have to have a creative outlet. And so that's something that cosplay has been. That's something that honestly learning multiple languages from around the world has done for me, just to keep that creative outlet flowing, because I have to do it in order to keep me okay.
So was the aerial yoga or aerial silk dancing, was that part of you kind of finding the creative outlet, or was that just something that you fell into?
So that one, a little bit of both. So actually, when my husband and I moved to Atlanta, because we lived like an hour and a half north, where there was nothing there, he started parkour classes, and I just went with him a couple times, and they had a slopes class at the same time, and I was like, that looks really fun. I'll do that. And I did ballet for 12 years as a child. And so I was like, I need to do something to get me in shape. I hate weight training, but I want to stay healthy. I want to keep doing something. So fell into aerial silks. And that, honestly, like you were talking about earlier, I used to be in chamber chorus. I did jazz singers. I was an opera singer. Like I say, I used to do ballet. So the performing arts is something I like to do. I think some of that translates to I do all the sales in our company because I just like to meet people and kind of put on a show, if you will. And so, yeah, doing the aerial silks, it's been a way for me to have a physical outlet, keep myself in shape, because certainly I think exercise does a ton for your mental health, and then also just you feel better. So those are all things that I do to try to keep strong, take care of myself, but still have fun. That actually one of the things I like to say all the time is that life is better upside down,
Mm.
um, because I love being upside down in the air.
Yeah, hanging from silk, yes.
Yes, yes, hanging from silks.
So I think that's definitely interesting. I mean, obviously, like, kind of goes back to your name, like the data and the creative side of it, right? So I think the only logical explanation was for you to go to college for marketing, which you did go to Georgia State for. So I want you to kind of talk about in your college days what like for me when I first got my graphic design degree and I walked into the first class the first day and I was just like, holy shit, I get to do graffiti at scale and I won't get arrested for it. Wow, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Did you feel that when you stepped into your first marketing class?
Not even close. Actually, my marketing degree, I'm not sure I really use any of it for what I actually do now, considering the fact that I run a marketing agency. Um, it was also very out of date. So I remember my last year, but right before I graduated, was the first time they were having a class about website analytics and social media. So the educational system certainly had not caught up yet to what was going on. And also, all through college, I also worked full time. So I went to school full time, worked full time. And then I also was doing some professional gaming at the time. So I hate free time, in case that's not clear. Um, so I was doing things like running websites. And I mean, that's honestly how I got into the development first, running websites for my gaming organizations or for the different just random side jobs that I was doing. And I did start building websites. I did the stereotypical thing that, my mom was like, oh, my child can build this website for our company. So like, that's how I first got started. Um, but with all of it, once I got to school, yeah, the marketing classes at Georgia State, which Georgia State is a great school,
Hmm.
no smack on them, but it was definitely a focus on traditional. Probably the only classes I liked were my advertising classes. And that's because it did blend kind of the sociology of how do you tap into what consumers are thinking. Whereas I definitely felt the rest of the marketing classes they weren't that far removed from like the accounting and finance classes that I had to take. It was all about running the numbers, and being able to measure campaigns. But like I say, none of it was attributed to how we do things in digital.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I stuck with it and I got my degree, but I don't think I use any of it,
Mm.
if
Mm.
I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, at least you have the sense of what it is. And to your point, you say, you probably do most of the sales. I think you probably use it without even thinking about it, but it's kind of ingrained in who you are.
Definitely could be part of it. The most I got out of my business degree at Georgia State would be on the accounting and finance side and just understanding, more of the how to do business.
Mhm.
So keeping my books clean, because my mother retired from the IRS, so paying your taxes is something that, like, if I haven't done, then Thanksgiving becomes very uncomfortable. So I am very appreciative for that, but on the creative side, or just how to reach people digitally, um, they just didn't really have the context for it. My legal business classes were super handy too, because intellectual property is something that's a hot topic always when it comes to digital. Like, you even talk about all these AI models and like the chat GPTs of the world and the way that they're infringing on intellectual property rights. Um, Having the background to be able to speak to some of that, at least in an educated way, has definitely been helpful. Um, and yeah, the sales stuff, I just like talking to people and learning and trying to figure out how can we solve their problems or get them to a better place, um, which I think comes from
Yeah, yeah,
being
it definitely
social.
comes from that. So, I mean, it kind of leads me into, I mean, usually when I have this conversation, like the other spouse, the other half is usually completely bipolar opposite. And just from the osmosis of me looking from the outside in, I would have to say that you and Arthur are pretty much on the same wavelength to a certain extent. You guys probably are at home speaking code, or am I right or wrong?
Yes, we do. So I also have a little one. And yeah, he already understands some development concepts at 7 years old. So we do talk shop pretty often. Um, and yeah, we largely are on the same pages. He teaches me a ton about what's coming down the pipe when it comes to technology. I'm usually introducing him to new platforms or tools that could help make his job or life easier. And it is really nice that if I'm trying to build an API and I can't get it to work, then I just go downstairs and I say, fix it for me.
Mm, mm.
And then I make him dinner to pay him back.
Sounds like a win-win. So I'm happy that you brought up Piper. So I mean, obviously you're talking about Piper 7 years old, right? And I want you to kind of talk about where would you like him to ideally be. And I know all parents would want their kids to do whatever they want, but considering that both parents are into technology, into coding, are you guys kind of leading him in that direction?
So just trying to give him a good base. I will say, yes, I definitely had a proud mama moment when he started to show a lot of interest in robotics. We attended a gaming expo a few months back, and now he's really into pinball. So we're talking about building pinball machines together. So yes, I think tech is just inherently going to be part of who he is. He's also really into gaming. Again, he has us as parents, so I'm not sure he had a chance otherwise. Um, that yeah, he's also just really imaginative. So doing things like game design or software design, um, those are things that I can already tell he's got a natural affinity for.
Mm.
But we'll see where he ends up. He's 7. He's got a lot of time.
Yeah, there's a lot of time, but I mean, we have a 18-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I remember when they were like babies. So like the comparison of time frames, it goes by so fast. You wouldn't even believe that he's 7 and he'll be 21 overnight. So keep that in
Oh,
mind.
I know.
Keep that in mind. So I think this is a hell of a conversation, right? So I want you to kind of talk about identifying yourself just using 3 to 5 words. What would those 3 to 5 look like? I mean, you do a lot of different things and you have a lot of different overlapping personalities. What 3 to 5 words could identify you?
Hmm. All right. So 3 to 5 words. So the first would have to be mother, um, Hawaiian, and then probably okay, I'm gonna probably use 4. Foodie and yeah, at this point, entrepreneur.
Hmm. I think it's interesting. It's kind of like I think through osmosis, the more and more I talk to people, the more and more I keep attracting more and more people that love to travel and more people that love food. It's so bizarre. So since you brought up Hawaii, I mean, where else have you been besides Hawaii, and what kind of favorite cuisine do you indulge in?
So my dad worked for the Department of Defense, so we moved a ton as a kid. But he was a scientist for the DoD, so he had to stay in the States.
Mm.
Other than that, I get to travel a lot for work, so I do enjoy that. Did a study abroad program in Italy. Arthur and I actually took Piper to Spain for a month last summer. So, like I said, I've gotten to travel. Haven't yet gotten to go to Japan, but that will hopefully be a trip that I plan soon. Favorite cuisines are honestly, I really love Indian food and Lebanese food.
Very cool. Very cool.
So
Yeah.
not at all related to Hawaiian food, but
Yeah. It's global.
yeah.
Definitely global. So I mean, definitely when you go to Japan, I mean, we just came back from Japan like last month, so it's definitely one of those places that you can kind of go to Japan so many different times you never get to see everything. It's like almost impossible. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what that trip looks like for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So obviously you brought up your dad, which is I think would be a soft spot for you. But ideally, if you had an opportunity, if your dad was still around, considering that Piper's around and when he wasn't around, what would you kind of like to talk to him about to let him know kind of where you were and where you are right now?
So I think my dad would be absolutely flabbergasted and at the same time not surprised at all that I own my business. And he and I would probably be nerding out about technology as well. So my dad, like I say, was a scientist and was into tech. He had a computer science degree. He had a master's. He skipped his bachelor's. I don't know. The Navy does weird things. Uh, but yeah, he and I would just probably geek out on the type of work I get to do and the data points and how much data we're playing with and how much and yeah, just the things that we can find out. Um, on the softer side, yeah, it would be just a because my dad got hit by the Enron scandal.
Mm.
So he survived like 3 rounds of layoffs after that happened, and then the fourth round he didn't survive. So my family struggled for a little while after that. So being able to show him, I've got a stable income, I'm running a company, I provide a stable income for people that I really genuinely care about. And I've got this family, and it may not look exactly how he wanted it to, but
Mm.
we're making it work. And um, yeah, those would be the things that I would just like to really show him the things that he taught me,
Mhm.
how it enabled me to build the life that I think he wanted all of his kids to be able to build for themselves.
Mm.
So that's kind of a soft
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very powerful, and I mean, obviously, it would make you a stronger leader because obviously, you're leading by example, looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think another thing too, like kind of segueing back to Arthur, I mean, you guys just celebrated your 10th anniversary, which is something that would have been a monument to kind of talk about as well at scale, considering that you two are so much alike. So how do you guys kind of juggle and manage the similarities, considering that there's so many of them?
So, oh, what a great question. And yes, we celebrated 10 years. It's funny how when they went by really quickly and at the same time, not at all. But so we do typically enjoy doing a lot of things together. But I will say kind of in the later years of our relationship, we're learning to kind of have our own things again. So for example, like he did the parkour for a while. I've been doing silks. I tried to convince him to do the silks. He tried it once. He hated it. Which if you've seen Arthur, he's a really broad man. So him in the silks is really kind of funny to watch. And he's not the most graceful human being I've ever met. So but he's fantastic. Um, so we've started to do that, but for the most part, we still play video games together. We enjoy food. We enjoy adventures together. So, like for our 10th anniversary, we decided the thing we were going to do was take a trip to New York City,
Mm.
because we love to explore places together and have new experiences, and so just kind of get back to what it is we've always enjoyed with each other. So just making really intentional plans to do that. Another thing we've done is so because I get to write my schedule and he's a developer, we typically take and Park Mobile has unlimited PTO. We take every Friday afternoon off. to spend time together before we have to pick up the kiddo from school.
Mhm.
So that way we at least have time every week where we're getting time together just as the two of us. Um, and I'm going to be honest, in the 10 years that we've been married and the 13 years we've been together, it has not always been smooth sailing. Um, it never is.
Mhm.
Uh, but you kind of have to figure out whether it's going to be worth it to you or not. And I'm going to be honest, I do not want to have to learn how to live with somebody else. That sounds awful.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I could definitely see. Yeah, starting over is definitely one of those things that you have to face it head on if it has to happen. But yeah, you're definitely right about that.
yeah.
So yeah, obviously you're talking about like your home husband. So I want to kind of flip it to like your work wife. I want to talk about Miss Gray for a minute because I mean that's your partner, that's your other half at work, and I would think like she has to be kind of the complete opposite of you for that business kind of work, or is she on the same wavelength as well?
So we're definitely more complementing sides than the same than Arthur and I. So for example, I'm definitely the let's just try it and see what happens
Mhm.
person, and she's like, no, hold on, let's think about this before we do things. Yeah, so she's kind of my voice of reason. I'm her voice of make a decision and let's do something rather than think about it forever. Um, and then she also is much like, so I'm the more technical side. She has a singular talent for framing challenges or solutions. Just the way that she's able to communicate sometimes is just, it's fun to watch because she's just so good at it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we're definitely, we do have our similarities though. Thankfully, I would say where we're similar is in our values and
Mhm.
what kind of company we want to build. So I think that's usually the really critical part to be compatible on, because if your values don't mesh, then you're going to invite a lot of hostility and conflict into the workplace. But we're not always on the same page about how to get there. She's also much more of a visionary. It actually, it's funny, when we first started working together, she would tell me ideas and immediately I went into, oh my God, I have to figure out how to make all these things happen. Okay. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? And so we kind of had to have a meeting to understand, like, when she is thinking out loud and dreaming out loud, that doesn't automatically turn into my to-do list. I was putting that pressure on myself. She wasn't. But yeah, being able to have that person who is that visionary, who's thinking about where are we going next, has been something that has made this a lot more successful for me, because it's definitely a place where I lack.
Mhm. Mhm.
So.
So how did you guys find each other? Because I mean, obviously in partnerships, it's always like a push and pull. There's always many partnerships beforehand until you find the right partner, and then like the right strategy, the right business, the right name, the right brand. Like there's so many different variables that goes into business, especially with partnerships. How did you guys juggle that and come to find each other?
So we actually met through an online community called Women in Tech SEO. It was founded by this incredible woman, Arij Abu Ali, based out of the UK. Because the fact is, if you're an SEO and you're female, you are generally automatically assumed that you're going to be on the content side, not the technical side, which obviously in this case, we're both tech SEOs. So we met in there, and Tori has owned the business for about 6 years now. She basically went on maternity leave and decided she didn't want to come back. So she started Grey Dot. And I met her about 2.5, well, no, 3 years ago at this point. So we met through this community. She was looking for some help with a page speed item, so how fast the website loads. So I started freelancing for her. I was working at an agency, but I did my 50 hours a week there, and then I would have my side hustle just to make some extra money. And we just hit it off. I remember the first kind of social conversation. We figured out we both our favorite gin is the same, which at that point I was like, I don't even know anybody else who knows about this gin, let alone it's their favorite. And it just kind of like catapulted from there. Plus, she knew she was moving to Canada. So her partner works at Shopify. So they were moving to Canada with his work visa. And so she needed a US partner. And she kind of planted that bug in my ear. And I actually remember it was in January. And I came downstairs, talked to my husband, and I was like, this sounds really exciting. I think she's like trying to get me to like buy into the company, and like this could be really cool. And so that just started conversations and so that was in January, and come May 1st, we became business partners. Um, and she still owns the majority, as honestly I think she should. She built it. So she's taken care of a lot of those things, like the name and the legal items, and just so a lot of that she had already done. That yeah, it's just been figuring out what work do each of us want to do, how can we complement each other. We've expanded the team since then, so now we actually have employees. We've just been really fortunate to, like I say, our values are the same. So even when we've had those really difficult conversations, it's always been done with care and respect.
Mhm.
And I think that's ultimately what it is that we absolutely respect the crap out of each other. And with the way that I see how she treats the people around her and the way that she sees how I treat the people around me, we would follow each other into hell.
Mm.
So we found something that I think is rare, and I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, just by hearing the way you speak about her, I mean, I think obviously I can't wait to see where you guys go leaps and bounds, considering that, AI is now and there's a whole new generation of SEO and compliance and variations are all up and coming currently right now. And I think you made a really big, solid segue to talk about optimization via image quality and images. So I want you to kind of talk about that. I mean, obviously, in the usual SEO optimization is always about, naming the files, compressing the images, make sure the load time is good. But where do you see AI playing into that, considering that now you can kind of do some of those elements at scale automation?
So the funny thing is we've actually been able to do that at scale for a while. It's just now everybody else, like it's become now table stakes to do it that way. So I think where we're really seeing this play in, okay, so there's a few nuances here. First, the amount of available content and imagery has expanded. We also are seeing a ton of legal conversations happen right now. So I will say to anybody using images or even text that's generated by AI or these LLMs, ChatGPT being the biggest one, the EU has already come out and said it cannot be protected, and the US Office of Copyright has said the same. So there's definitely some legalities there, and as there should be, because I do think there's a level of we need to be able to protect our artists and the work that they do because it is valuable.
Mhm.
But essentially, what we're seeing is now there's just a wealth of content that's out there, which means that the importance or the emphasis put on things actually created by humans is going to become that much more important. So I think we're going to start seeing more tool sets come out to be able to prove that. We're already seeing things that are trying to determine whether it was made by AI or not. Typically, if you're looking at an image and you want to know if it was made by AI, their hands are probably going to have 6 to 7 fingers. The eyes are going to look weird. Like it'll look normal at first, and then once you start digging in a little bit deeper, you're like, oh wait, that's really weird. I've seen like trees be upside down, so it can get a little wild, but it can also be really fun. I mean, I use it myself. I have fun with it. I'm not trying to sell any of it, but I have fun with it. um, so yeah, really being able to understand and put emphasis on what is actually created by people will be more important. I also think, frankly, for businesses, if you're still using stock photography, you have no excuse anymore.
Facts.
Yeah, like stop it. And I think even actually we're going through and we're updating any of the stock photos in our own website because of that. Because it's just, there's no excuse. It's too easy to create custom photos,
Mhm.
custom imagery. So I think we're going to see, ideally what we're going to see is the branding will become that much tighter. Brands will really have to figure out who they are and how they want to present in a way that I think audiences will start having more that they can connect to,
Mhm.
as opposed to just, well, Kleenex is the brand that I use for my facial tissue.
Oh yeah.
Just
Yeah.
yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, as a point, I mean, I specialize in branding, so I definitely well aware of what you're talking about. And I think if anyone is following me, you can kind of see what she's talking about to where all of our content has been completely re-informed as based upon our brand. Because if you start studying and analyzing prompt engineering, it there's no limitations to what you can create based upon what your brand represents. So, do you have anyone internal in your team that's like well aware or is essentially studying or analyzing the new language of prompt engineering?
Yes. So we do have while content's not our specialty, like I say, we're not a content house. We do have an entire content department. And those are things that they're working on. Mostly because we're trying to figure out, just like our clients are, and we like to test things ourselves before I recommend anything to my clients. Just where are the wins in process? So, for example, if you've ever looked at our website, most of our blogs are 3,000 to 6,000 words. Tori and I are very verbose people. There's also a lot of nuance to what we do, and we like to go into it. So figuring out ways, when you're writing that 6,000 word article, it takes forever. And so trying to find those shortcuts. So doing things like, so actually what I typically do, because I'm not a very good writer, and thank goodness for my content team, because I'll make outlines or make videos explaining what I'm doing or what I'm trying to teach. And they'll do their magic and make me actually sound quite intelligent. And it's really kind of amazing what they do. So are there shortcuts in there? So can we feed these outlines to, I generally don't like to feed them to ChatGPT, because if you feed something to ChatGPT, that means everybody has access to it. Samsung actually got in a lot of trouble because they had source code that somebody put into ChatGPT to help refactor and clean it up. And then their source code was available to anybody. So be careful with that. But basically, like I said, are there shortcuts? So I still want to rely on humans on my team to come up with the original ideas or the original meat of content. But are there ways where we can finesse or identify where, hey, you didn't ask this question, or you didn't address this concern, and that's something that the AI tools can help you identify where the gaps are, basically. Plus, I love using it to respin things. So again, take that 6,000 word article, find me all the quotable items so I can make a bunch of Twitter posts or LinkedIn posts. So yeah, like I said, trying to keep the overall birth of content still owned by humans, but how can we use AI to make us work faster, and spend less time in the things that doesn't make us unique. So that's a lot of what we focus on, certainly with prompt engineering, for anybody who wants something that's super brand specific. I love the platform Copy AI. I think they do a great job. Also, because I've seen them do a really good job of forcing companies to figure out what their brand is, because they make you go through an entire brand questionnaire and help you figure it out if you haven't yet. Obviously, working with actual branding professionals like yourself, you're going to get 10x the results. It's always that much better. But not all budgets are equal. So yeah, just all of that.
There's definitely a fact. So, I mean, I think on that last sentence about all budgets not being equal, let's say if someone is on a scrappy budget, right, really, really scrappy, and they want to start learning some of these things by themselves, I think the cheapest and cost-effective way is through books. So, what recommendations do you have, like from the early days until now, that someone they want to get into your space, they love what you're doing, and they want to kind of learn more about SEO? What books would you recommend for
So there is a book called The Brand Playbook that I highly recommend, because I think anybody in marketing should at least have a concept of brand and what it plays into. After that, honestly, so I will say for what we do, I've typically found that books don't keep up. Because, for example, Google makes pretty significant updates all the time. So like we just had 3 major updates last week. Well, all of us were at a conference in San Diego, and it was really rude of them to do that when we were all there. And I mean, it's things like there's recorded over 1,000 changes to the algorithm every year. So when it comes to being able to keep up on it, there's a site, moz.com, M-O-Z. They've got a beginner's guide to SEO, which is super great. There's Data Sci 101, written by Brittany Muller, who will teach you a ton about AI and basically how does it work so that you can understand what's going on. And then also gets into a little bit of the ethics so that you can, as a business owner, can make the decisions about what kind of impact you want to make. I think that's really important too. Those are usually my top go-tos. Once you start going into more advanced things, definitely start joining communities. For anyone who identifies as female or a woman, join the Women in Tech SEO group. We do a lot more than just SEO. We cover a ton of different ground in the digital marketing space. And then there's other communities that are open to everyone. So Tofu is a really great one, top of the funnel. That one is free. Traffic Think Tank is another community. That one is paid, but you get access, honestly, to decision makers. So it can be really, really strong in that way. But yeah, honestly, look for the communities, look for the blogs that you like, because unfortunately with books, if it gets published, it's probably too late. Ooh, actually, I'm wrong. There is another book, Product Led SEO by Eli Schwartz, is super great. It starts to talk about SEO has traditionally been thought of as a cost center. This is shifting it more into a conversation about it is a product, so it's worth investing in. And once you start having conversations that way, it's actually much easier to get buy-in, and the results that you can create get that much more effective. So.
Well, I would think, instead of necessarily being upset with Google, I would say we should be kind of content with them, because if they did not change it as much as they did, I don't think digital marketing agencies would be as fruitful or as needed, because again, we always have to keep up with the requirements to keep our clients up to speed or on the top page or the top 3 pages, right? So
Totally. And yes, I live and die by Google. It's just been a particularly tumultuous year. So a lot of us are just sort of like, we're tired.
yeah.
But because their job has gotten a lot harder with Chat GPT and the other LLMs that have entered the space, plus they are losing share to TikTok, Reddit, Pinterest every day. So they've just got a lot going on and trying to figure out how to compete. Like, I think just in the last 24 hours, they released a function where you can add notes to a search result and others can read your notes. And clearly it's, they're trying to figure out how can they capture some of that feeling of Reddit and like the authentic user experiences and sharing and testimonials. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Oh yeah. I mean, for marketers, I mean that's sub big data content, right? I mean, like not only are you searching for keywords, but we also know why you're searching for those keywords, which is a hybrid between Facebook and Google. Damn.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's sexy. Definitely sexy. So yeah. So think about words of wisdom. Let's say someone is listening right now and they're a female C-level executive. They have a family, traveling, juggling all the different things, maybe a 7-year-old kid and 3 dogs. What words of insight do you have for them to kind of help them to be as mindful as you are and as level-headed as you are through the struggles that may be presented?
The first, I'm not always as level-headed. So let's have a conversation about realistic. Sometimes it's just not the way life goes. Also, I did receive great advice about picking my priorities. So, like with balancing my kid, one of the things I do, I'll look at my work schedule, I'll see what activities he has, and I figure out how many of them I can commit to in a month.
Mhm.
And I let him pick which ones. That way I am more conforming to what matters to him
Mhm.
instead of what I think is valuable. Because ultimately it's about investing in that relationship. So yeah, it's just prioritize and know your boundaries. As a child of the 90s, especially as a female, we were told we can do anything, which often translated to you have to do everything. And I know that's something for me personally, I've been, kind of coming to peace with of
Mhm.
I can't, and that's okay. And that's why I have a partner um, in life who's going to help me figure things out. And when I need to ask him to help me figure out dinner, that's okay.
Mhm.
And then I have my partner in business. And so just, you don't have to do it all. Figure out what you can do and know that you are absolutely enough. One of my closest friends, she's a yoga instructor, and her favorite saying is, my existence predicates my enoughness.
Wow.
And I think we cannot say that enough.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So, I mean, playing off of that, right? You made a statement saying that automation is much of you trying to automate as much as your life as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like anyone that understands automation or like Internet of Things, if you want to go back to old school keywords, this is something that all developers or technology driven people like we look for automation at any means necessary. So with that, like what tools do you use that you would like to recommend to the listener that can help them automate their processes and systems at scale?
Um, Ooh, what a good question. Yeah, so I actually do use ChatGPT for automating a lot of my home life. So I use ChatGPT. I have fed it my family's likes and dislikes and dietary requirements, and it builds my meal plans for me and even creates recipes. They haven't all turned out to be bangers, but overall they're pretty good. So yeah, using those tools. As far as what I use, trying to think. So I also use something called Motion that automates my calendar for me and helps me identify where the pockets of availability are. And I also put my tasks in them so that it schedules my tasks for me, and including things like I schedule my workout time and my time to eat lunch, just to make sure that I get those times for myself. So love Motion. It's a great tool. And it's relatively cheap for the amount of satisfaction it has brought to my life. So yeah, any of those scheduling automation tools for someone who's wearing those multiple hats of spouse, parent, business owner, friend, highly recommend.
Very cool. So the listeners listening, and I would like they're probably twitching at this point in time. Like, how did they get in contact with you? If they want to hire you, they want to work with you. Where do you want to send them?
So you can always find us on Twitter and LinkedIn at gray.co. For anybody who wants to reach out directly to me, I'm on Twitter pretty religiously at Sam Torres ATL, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. And again, if you are in marketing at all and you identify as a woman, please, please, please join Women in Tech SEO. It is a magical community. It absolutely changed my life. It's just a fantastic place to be.
Very cool. Very cool. So I got a bonus question for you, and I think it'll be pretty interesting considering that you have so many different disciplines under your belt. If you could spend 24 hours with anyone, and this person could be someone that's dead, someone that you never met, someone that you look up to, but you have an opportunity to spend 24 hours with this person, who would it be and why?
Ooh, that is such a good question. There's definitely the sentimental side that's like, well, my dad, because I miss him. And actually, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to go with, because I think there was still so much I could learn from him, and he was a brilliant person. But yeah, I'd have to go with my dad.
Yeah, yeah. I would see that answer coming. I mean, especially considering that, you have a 7-year-old that's probably starting to remind you of him a little bit at certain times, I would think.
Okay. Also, I don't know if you can see, that's literally the last photo of my dad taken. So
Mm,
keep it close to me pretty all the time.
yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that answer. So going into closing, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of Boss Cage. So now my show is yours and I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
What has been your favorite moment on your podcast so far? And obviously, not me.
Wow.
You're not allowed to say anything that happened today.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had dozens of moments. I mean, considering I've interviewed roughly about 500 people at this point, so it's a jambalaya of different pinpoints. I mean, some people I've made friends with, some people that I follow them and we stay in communication. Some people was just kind of like the wow factor of just kind of like, I can't believe I'm actually speaking to this person, and this person is so like nonchalant and even tone and even key. So for me, I would just think that the experience of being a podcaster in a whole is the greatest moment for me. I don't think there's any one particular person or episode that outweighs another. It's the collective of all of them combined.
Okay. And you said you're in branding. So, what is kind of your dream client to land and work on their branding?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, with the whole branding thing, what my best client honestly is myself currently right now, because I have so many different tentacles to brand and grow. I mean, we just started an internet radio. We're getting ready to start our Roku TV, and so again, like branding all these different things at scale to all match the seamless brand of what Boston Cage is and what it represents. That's a job in itself. And to be honest with you, we're gonna get to the point to where we're not gonna have time or room for clients to brand them. So
That's the goal, right?
100%,
Yeah. Well, very cool.
100%. Any other questions?
No, because unfortunately, I have to run to another meeting.
Cool. So, I mean, I definitely appreciate you being on the show today. I think that you brought a lot to the table, and all the listeners. Obviously, I think there was an emotional side. There was definitely some inspirational stuff, and I think there's definitely some excitement to tech as well. So, I definitely appreciate you being here today, and I look forward to see what you're going to do moving forward.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. SA Grant, over and out.